You're listening to episode 139 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness Practice and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness teachers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Gus Castellanos speaks with us today about addiction, sobriety, mindfulness, and prison. If you're listening to this podcast and find value and insights from what is shared here, know that this is made possible from your generosity and the generosity of others like you. I want to thank those of you who are making monthly donations to keep this podcast going. And if you're not yet, please take a moment, go to presentmomentmindfulness.com and click on Make a Donation. One-time or especially monthly donations show you value this work, which can't happen without you. Thank you for your help, your support, and your kind generosity. The road to mindful practice is rarely a straight and level path. Usually there are twists and turns, unexpected roadblocks, places and times where there is a need to take a few steps back to start again. What is learned from that difficult journey can be transformative in our life and the lives of others. Gus Castellanos, MD, retired neurologist, graduated from the University of Miami Medical School in 1980. He practiced neurology and sleep medicine in Palm Beach County from 1987 to 2007. He's been a practitioner of mindfulness since 1999 and a teacher since 2009, trained by the University of Massachusetts Medical School Center for Mindfulness and the University of Miami Neuroscience Lab. He currently teaches at a variety of facilities and venues throughout South Florida, including Sari Center for Integrative Cancer Care, Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, The Mindful Path, U Health Fitness Center, and has facilitated programs for FIU College of Medicine and HELP program, the Hanley Treatment Center, the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, and the U.S. Army and Hospice of Palm Beach County. He's involved in mindfulness research with the University of Miami Neuroscience Lab. Our guest today is Gus Castellanos. Gus, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Yes, thank you, Ted. It's great to be here with you.
So you and I have seen each other online in quite a number of different spots, not just Facebook, but in mindful groups in particular. And I'm wondering if you might share with the listeners about your background.
My background in mindfulness in particular, right? So I'm a retired neurologist and sleep medicine specialist is what was my original career. And it was in the 90s when I was raising the family and the career was booming and blossoming and all that I started noticing some problems that I wasn't quite aware of what was going on within me. But looking back now, it's pretty straightforward. It was sort of the burnout kind of complaints, getting tired of medicine, the people, the institutions, the things around were causing a lot of trouble. My own partnership that was in was having some challenges. And I, was not, put it this way, self-aware enough to know how to handle myself appropriately. So one of the biggest things I would do was work harder. I had that workaholism attitude that I thought, I went through medical school, an internship, residency, I got here, I'm successful, blah, blah, blah. If I do more of this, and also the perfectionism, not working out, I better do more and see if I can make it work out. And of course, that would just compound the problem tremendously. So my second vice was to sample the prescription pills that I received as samples. And not sure if you know much about neurology and sleep medicine, but the samples we got were the very the goodies, if you will, when it comes to habit forming pills. So it included things like Ambien and barbiturates and stimulants, benzodiazepines like Xanax and Ativan, and then eventually the opioids. And so samples like that were coming through, and I thought, well, I can handle this. I can start taking them. And over a period of a few years, really started ramping up on those. It wasn't like I was a daily user, but I was abusing them. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. Thinking that I can handle them, thinking I deserved it. You work hard, not working out, whatever. And my wife started getting concerned, and you could see some problems coming up. Some lack of memory, what you call blackouts sometimes. Mm-hmm. Things like that. And so she asked me to get help, and she was starting to do yoga to kind of care for herself. And she wanted me to see a therapist, go to treatment, do this. And I said, no, I'm a neurologist. I know what I'm doing. And of course, that just made things worse. And it so happened that in 1998, when things were ramping up, a friend of mine brought mindfulness-based stress reduction to Jupiter Medical Center. And so what actually happened was he called me up and said, hey, Gus, you're the director of the sleep center and you're a neurologist. Send patients to this because we're starting the program. We need you to send patients and all that. And I kind of said something like, well, you're a woo-woo doctor, or, I'm a good doctor. I don't do those crazy things like you, whatever. And then he said, no, this is University of Massachusetts Medical School. They've got research. Go look at the research. So I did. And I came back to him and I said, yes, I know. I see it now. I'll send the patient. What do I do? And he said, call this number. We started this day. We're going over here. And then he said to me that I should take the class because I was pretty messed up at the time. And he didn't know what I was going through, but he could kind of sense. And he took the class too. So it was sort of like, let's see what this is about. And so that was, to me, a way out of my issue. I said, okay, I'll do this, appease my wife on the one hand. I'm actually doing it for the patient, not for myself. But sure enough, having gone through that class in 1998, I came out of it with a little bit of more self-awareness of what was going on. And I knew that I was, abusing the pills. I just didn't, I was excusing it off in the wrong direction as opposed to really getting down inside what's going on. So I got a little better. I started practicing a little better, and then I sort of faded from the practice, as I see these days so commonly. And maybe within a year, some other things started happening at work and all this, and things got worse. I wasn't practicing, and so I just started really getting into the pills. And the pills really ramped up at that point. I can say it in this way. So I consider myself, the polite word is substance use disorder person. It's called an addict, flat out. And so there's the addiction really ramped up very quickly to lots of opioids, and they stopped giving the samples. So I had to start writing prescriptions for myself, the so-called drug diversion. And in so doing, that would trigger more fear and anxiety every time I walked up to a Walgreens and what were they called then? Eckerd's back then. The different pharmacies, nervous, and oh my God, they're catching, and the pharmacist is a different one. I looked around for security cameras, and then I would get the pills, and then the whole shame and guilt thing would come in. So between the addiction and now more shame and more guilt, this really ramped up quickly. And then it came along, somebody bought the pharmacy next door to me, next door to my office, and came over, and he said, hey, can you send me patients? I just started this. I need the business. I'm so-and-so, and be help you out however you want, this and that. So, of course, the next day I went over there and wrote another prescription to him, and he filled it, and I did that a few times. And then after the third or fourth time, he called me up one day, and he said, I need you to come back here. I got something for you. And I thought, oh my God, the gig's up. I'm in trouble. He's going to report me. And when I come back, he actually gives me a bottle of 300 Vicodin, which are the pretty strong opioids. And he said, here, take this for free. You don't have to keep coming back so often. And that was the day that I kind of turned the corner, and I was back 2 weeks later. Those 300 were gone very quickly. And for the next couple of years, he gave me all the pills I wanted, any pill I wanted for free, anytime. So it would be 2:00 in the morning. I'd call him up. It would be on a Friday night. It would be Sunday morning. It would be during the workday. And so you can imagine I really, really got messed up with the pills, with the opioid pills. I took them really, my wife had it and was, this is it. You got to do that. She tried to do her best to try to get me to help. And again, I was still like in denial of how much problems I was having, even though it was pretty obvious. So I took the MBSR course again. I said, hey, help me before, maybe it'll help me again. And this time something clicked, I think, more because I remember practicing, even though I was taking the pills, I was still practicing and went on and developed. I was doing a lot of body scanning and just noticing what's happening. And it was about 6 months after that I finally decided I better do something. There's more of the story there, but I decided to try and detox myself. So again, using my own ingenuity, which got me into recovery because I messed up the detox. I ended up overdosing and had to be revived and the whole bit. But I woke up in the intensive care unit of Jupiter Medical Center, the hospital I worked at. And when I was there, I never forget that day looking up out of the bed going, I'm on the wrong side of this bed. Up there looking down at me. Yeah, and I was tied down in leather restraints. They must have been doing something all night. But right then I surrendered. I knew the gig was up. I knew that now everybody would know. So I went off to treatment, a 30-day program out in Arizona, and got plugged into a recovery program, 12-step program and all that, and have been clean and sober ever since. And that's been 15 years, actually. So I've been doing pretty good as far as that. But 6 months after I got clean and sober, me not knowing what anything, if anything, the pharmacist was doing, the FBI came to me. And eventually, to make a long story short, were telling me that he was using my medical license to commit insurance fraud to the tune of $2 million. Yeah. And so when I told them my side of the story, it took them 3 hours to finally be convinced that I really did not know what he was doing, that I was just getting the pills and using them myself. And so they said they'd be lenient with me, but if I took the deal, it would go more smoothly. And so I talked to many people, including the attorney. They said, yeah, sign the deal. You can't find, these are the feds. You're not going to be able to fight them and blah, blah, blah. So took the deal and went in front of the judge, and the judge said, you're a doctor, you should know better. I don't care about this deal. I'm going to send you to prison for 3 years. You're going to go on probation for 3 years. You can't get credit cards. Again, you got to live modestly, all this rules. And then he said, surrender your medical license and pay back the millions of dollars this guy spoke to, which was a sort of a sharp turn in the direction I wasn't expecting to go. So that's when I had been doing, because I was clean and sober, I had been doing a fair amount of meditating. In fact, if I remember, I was at least 45 minutes every morning, an hour of yoga in the evening, and then I was exploring different meditations, though the bulk of the thing I was doing was the mindfulness-based program meditation, because I had the recordings and they were the easiest ones to get to. Plus, we were continuing to run the MBSR programs and other mind-body practices at Jupiter Medical Center, and I was a big supporter, and my wife and I attended their classes quite a bit. So I was kind of calm and collected when I walked into prison, surprisingly so. And of the 3 years, I ended up doing 23 months, so just about 2 years. But what I did mostly in prison was actually meditate, and I can't endless numbers of body scan. I mean, I'll never forget this. I would sit down in the morning, an hour and a half, and lay down on the bunk and body scan after body scan. The average was something like 4 hours a day, some days up to 6 hours. But meanwhile, I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out. I mean, I had no other skills, no other trainings. No one had taught me anything. I'd never worked a day in my life except for as a doctor. And good-hearted people, well-intended people were saying you can be a sobriety coach, a sober companion, a life coach. You can, become a website designer. And I was like, I don't know, whatever. Somebody's going to have to tell me what to do. But when I walked out of prison, a couple of things happened. A friend of mine, actually the doctor that turned me on to mindfulness, brought me into the MBSR program in 98. So this would be now in 2008. The end of 2008. So 10 years later, he needed somebody to help convert his paper records of the doctor into the electronic medical records. And he thought, I needed the job. He thought I would be better off than having a computer person do it, since I had some, intuitive knowledge of what to do with the records. And the other thing that happened, I got introduced to, I'm guessing you know who are, Tusi Kluge.
Yep.
So Tusi happened to live seasonally here with her husband in Palm Beach. Somebody said to me, "You should meet this is the way she said it. This old lady that does mindfulness in prison." And this woman that was a friend of mine, she said, "I don't know what mindfulness is, but maybe you can just figure that out for her." And I go, "Well, I know what mindfulness is. I've been doing this." And of course, I just been in prison. So I met Tusi, and Tusi right away says, "Forget prison. Let's go." I'm connected with the University of Massachusetts, the Center for Mindfulness. Let's get you plugged in there. You can get some training. We'll go around South Florida, and we'll do what she kind of instilled it. And I forgot her word, but something like, "This is what John Kabat-Zinn had always said, let's spread this. This is useful for people. It can be real help." And I already knew that, not only because of MBSR, practicing medicine, but in prison, how useful it was for me. In prison, by the way, it was helpful in the sense that, because I finally got to know people over time. You don't just sort of jump in and make friends, but some of the people said, who came up to me and said, "We saw you over there sitting still with something across your eyes and the headphones on," because I would put the headphones on for static to block out noise. And they said, "We thought you were some weirdo, so we left you alone." And it was useful because that way you didn't get dragged into, the shenanigans with these people. And on the other hand, you didn't look like a snitch by refusing to be people. But what happened was some of the meditators, there's some very powerful spiritual people walking through the prison. We got together, and for 6 months, every single night, 7 nights a week, we got together for an hour, and we just led each other. So we'd do body scans. This other guy would do some chanting. This person over here would put an object, a piece of rock or a piece of wood on the floor, and we would stare at it. We kind of knew something what we were doing, but we really didn't know it. But it was a real powerful experience to have a little group, like a mini sangha going on in the middle of all that craziness. But getting back, so I met Tusi. Tusi got me plugged in, started some of the trainings, and then we went to a treatment center, started a program there, and then we went down to the University of Miami's medical school for their Department of Public Health to try and get some MBSR going on in there, and we did. And then the other thing I did with Tusi, by the way, is every month she had a free, open to the community or friends, all-day session at her estate in Palm Beach. And she let me run those when they were gone for the summer. So pretty much for 4 years, once a month, I was doing these things in this beautiful estate with Tusi, and she brought down the UMass teachers to run some of them. So I got not only the training going on, but then I got to meet some of the people, and they were very helpful. And so that's how I got started teaching. Eventually, I started doing all those trainings, but when I heard something about certification, I said, "This is a joke. I'm not doing this. I'm done with licenses and all this stuff. What would you get certified as a mindfulness teacher? What does that mean?" And I had heard, I think it was Saki say at one of the retreats I was at, he says, "Yes, you can teach this. You just need an open mind and a big heart." And so I was telling everybody, I don't need certification. I got this big heart thing. I've got an open mind. Let me go. But I saw the world was changing around me. And then UMass was getting a little bit more strict with this. And I remember writing to them. I said, "This certification, what is this? And I have to pay all this money." And they said, they were very nice and this is just what we're doing. And then one time I responded by saying, "Well, I don't know if John Kabat-Zinn is even certified. Why should I be certified?" So, I had been doing all this training, so I just went ahead and filled it out. And so I'm just saying that's how I got through the whole certification thing. Started with Tusi's gift of just taking me under her wing, literally, and we went around and started teaching. And now I teach at all these places where some of which, when we started way back when, I was 10 years ago, I'm still teaching at, and then a whole bunch of other places throughout South Florida. So that's how I got here.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Thank you so much for your openness in sharing that. I know that can be difficult, and it's directly pertinent to what we're going to be talking about today a little bit more. So you've been part of bringing mindfulness to those who are incarcerated.
Yes.
And how did you, I mean, you talked about some of how you got involved with that. Is there something with some programming you've been doing more recently that you can talk a little bit about?
Well, how I got involved, by the way, it goes back to Tusi's thing too. I think in one of those all days that we were doing, somebody who was in the Southern Palm Zen group, which is in Palm Beach County, not far away from where Tusi lived in Palm Beach, showed up at one of these things and saw me there and heard, I guess saw what we were doing, and we would talk about MBSR and all that. And she was employed at the time by the University of Miami's Cancer Center, but she was a member, now a monk, of the Zen group. And the Zen group was going out to this local prison for a couple of years and holding weekly Zen sits, and were sort of noticing that they were very, very useful, but maybe mindfulness could add on something. So this woman, when they were discussing the prison sangha and their holding of their session and wanting to do mindfulness, she said she knew me. And, they actually didn't know me very well, but just knew of me. And so that's how I got connected. They called me up, and actually what they said is, teach us how to do mindfulness in a few sessions, and then we'll go out and do it. And I said, I don't know how to do that. I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't even know how to do it. But what I said was, why don't we run an MBSR course, and then we can go from there. And so we did. I went down there and took it on for donations. They set it all up. We had 30 people there, probably 10 from the Zen group and another 20 from the public down in Boca Raton. And then we started talking. And from there, we decided to design a modified 8-week course based on MBSR, but then a woman that had trained with Roshi Joan Halifax's chaplaincy program was MBCT trained. She came on board, and so we then molded it more for her to be able to teach more MBCT-like. But anyway, we came up with an 8-week program based on MBSR and MBCT. Had to be highly modified because prison, it doesn't work like everyday people, community people. And we delivered that. And I think in the initial class, we had 28 inmates come through. And from there, they really grabbed onto it. They really liked it. At that point, I think we did it weekly classes, and we even held the all-day session there. And we, like what I was trained to do afterwards, let's keep it going. How do we keep it going? Well, the Zen group gave up one of their Fridays for mindfulness, to do. So they had three weeks of Zen, one of mindfulness. And the mindfulness group got really, really bonded together. They started coming together and they started really training, and they really liked it. So we upped it to 2 times a month. And over the last few years, pretty much they run the show. We just sit back and facilitate. We'll run a practice here and there for them. We'll lead some things. We'll lead the discussion sometimes, but they're pretty much doing it all. And it's great because they become sort of innovators. They're not just sort of sitting there every time coming there and we read 3 or 4 practices and we're done. They're reading from certain books. They're talking about their experiences with this, and they're really sharing a lot. So it's been very successful in our eyes in the sense that they continue to run it through on their own with a lot of different variations we can talk about if you want to, but it's been very rewarding. So
that's great. I'm wondering what were some of the challenges that you ran into getting a program into the system? Because it's not just, hey, let's do a program and you're done. There can be some resistance on the part of officials. Are you teaching religion? I got a problem with that. What were some of the things you ran into?
Well, that's a good point about the religion. Since it came under the umbrella with the Zen group, it wasn't any more to, so we ran through the chaplain services. So it wasn't that hard for him to just say, okay, you can call it whatever. It's still, in their mind, the Zen group running it. Now it's officially called mindfulness. So the original challenges that I hear from other people, they want to bring it into the prison. How do I go? Do I go to education? Some kind of service over here? Chaplain. We always say, try the chaplain first, see what that does. They have a much harder challenge to get in than we. But once we got in that door, then there was a whole bunch of other challenges on a practical basis. So in MBSR, we have these recordings we're supposed to listen to on a daily basis. They don't have that. we were able to get a sort of time in the chapel. I think, if I remember correctly, it was once or twice a week. They could come and listen to the recording, whoever wants to come and just listen to it. But for the most part, for instance, they just had to run their own body scans and do their own sitting meditation and their own movement. So it becomes, this is why we didn't actually call it, we called it Mindfully Building a Foundation for Living rather than MBSR. Then the practical issues that happen, you're ready to go and you arrive at the prison and say, we're in lockdown, sorry, we don't know when it's over, can come, don't come. So we would turn around and go back. And so that class had to be postponed. And then during some certain classes, things would happen. They would have to have an official count, pause. And in fact, during the all day, we had to wait 2 hours for a disruption of the count and something was going on. And so it can be very destabilizing when you're in there sort of in a groove in the class and everybody's sharing and then we're going on to the next practice and then boom, it stopped. But they're used to it, and I was used to it because I knew that system. You don't take it any personally, and you know that it's going to happen. So when we went on with this for a few years, we could see that there were new people dropping in. It's one of those sort of. It wasn't like the group was changing rapidly. Unfortunately, some of those people were in there for a long time, but it was changing over time. So we ran the program again last year. This time it was more MBSR based because it was myself and my co-teacher who's trained through the Prison Mindfulness, the Engaged Mindfulness Institute, this is what they do is teach teachers in the prison system to teach mindfulness. The challenges there were much more on the so-called practical prison side, the things that have to do with the disruption from the counts and from the lockdowns and pulling people out because they have to go do something, things like that. So the cohesiveness of the group varied, although I must admit of the 32 people that were signed up, probably 25, 26 were there every other week when we did it. So, but, and then bringing things in, you have to kind of get them cleared. We had to buy food from them for the all day session, for their lunchtime break and all that. So.
Yeah, so a number of different kinds of challenges in a very unique environment, one that many of us just are not familiar with. And boy, what an opportunity to practice dealing with chaos. So looking at the flip side of that, you've been doing this for a while. What are some of the success stories that you can share?
Success stories or the things that we hear about them?
Any of the above.
Okay. Yeah, so the surprising thing to me was that it was pretty well attended. Now I say that's surprising because I couldn't tell from my experience that we only had 6 people coming to our little group, even though we invited everybody. But they really took on to it, and I guess it's something to do with perhaps being very secular, and that kind of keeps it out of any mold that you don't have to be a Buddhist or you don't have to be against the religion or whatever, and that brings together a lot of people of different faith and background, and the once they got in and they saw what we were there, almost scientific, they really grabbed onto it. So that really helped, and the majority of people would just sort of report how much their stress level had gone down and how much better they were able to control their behaviors, and they didn't react so violently to everything, even if it was just internally and they were holding it on. So it actually it was becoming pretty obvious that there was lots of benefits going on from just coming to and talking with, and then what they would do. Just another interesting thing, by the way, it doesn't happen in the community. Remember, these guys live with each other 24/7.
Yeah.
So while there can be some negative to that, there was a lot of positives in the mindfulness, because when they see each other, it triggers immediately a recollection about being mindful, being aware, hey, you can pause right here. Or when they're once having a trouble, they can go over there and help, and say, hey, remember, take a breath here, and things like that. So lots of that kind of thing going on, as you might expect. If anybody has done any of these practices, you can, if you take them on, you will get that sense of, let me pause when I'm reactive. But they started really getting, much more than that started happening. handful of guys that actually got out. They were released and went into the reentry mode, which can be almost as bad, if sometimes worse than the prison system. If you've been down in prison for 10 years, and so imagine somebody coming out in 2012, they were there before cell phones, modern cell phones, and by then they've lost their license and passport. It's post 9/11 with all that security stuff. Navigating those things is, very challenging, and just to know that they had some resources within themselves to help them get through that we heard that a few times from the people that went out. It was a little better, so I don't want to sound like I'm knocking other programs, religions, but I did see a lot of people come to prison who took on the Christian way, and they came in and they were really good people in prison. They really stuck with it, and they were doing all the right things and staying out of trouble. But when they left, 4, 5, 6 months later, they'd be back, because all that stuff is less useful when you're dealing with the realities of life out here and trying to get a job, not to mention things like that. So the mindfulness it seems to give people more of a tool to really just stay grounded and notice their own reactivity before they say something or do something dumb that can put everything all that back, backtrack on that. And so other things that we heard. So one of the most interesting things that happened to me was that, so we're doing this program with a certain group of people, and they're pretty consistent, and they're doing other things, by the way. I'm not saying they're all the great behavior and everything was due to mindfulness, but they started taking on the healthier lifestyle, getting out of their shenanigans. So we heard from the chaplains. We've had 3 chaplains now in these 10 years we've been doing this, how good these people behave. And this last chaplain that we have now is super supportive. Just about anything we ask for, he's there. And when we want to bring in a guest, he'll take care of it like that. That's how much he cares for us. But there was a time when there was an education supervisor who started noticing that the guys in our class, while they were in her class, were different and more responsive and more engaged and stuff. So she started attending our classes and saying, "Oh, this is great. This is very useful. I want to adapt some of this mindfulness for my classes." Unfortunately, she's gone. So we heard from her. And then I went to see the doctor for something else, the doctor of the prison, and he started telling me how the people that are doing mindfulness are so much better, easier to deal with. They're not trying to manipulate the system, and they're not complaining as much, and they don't even come to the doctor that much anymore. They were doing better. So from the chaplains, the education people, the doctor, everybody was saying, these guys are doing better. So we ran into the warden one time walking out, and the warden even had heard something. Said, "Yeah, hey, keep it up." So we asked him, "Hey, can we have a meeting with you, because we'd like to bring this over to your staff, the guards and the administrative staff?" And he said, "Yeah, call me up. We'll have a meeting." Well, it took a month or 2 to finally get through him, and then he got replaced. This is another thing that happens there. The new warden, and we've gone to their all different levels in that prison system, and nobody right now wants to talk to us about that. They're just too busy with other things. But the point I'm making is, it wasn't just us noticing that they were doing better, or the prisoners, but the people in there. So,
yeah, you bring up an interesting point about how this is a community, that they are living together, and that itself can provide a support network as you see someone else being successful with something that you're both doing, or even as they stumble, just offering that support for one another in this shared experience. So I imagine, and from what you're saying that the others are reporting on it, that's really helpful to be in that situation, to have that kind of support.
Right, correct. And the trusting that comes from the session, because so I don't always know how authentic and honest they are in those classes, but they really do sound, over time, you get to see that they're very consistent at what they're saying, and then they become a little bit more open and vulnerable to share their things there. And I think that's really one of the key things that you can't get by just simple practice on your own, for sure.
So, Gus, what recommendations or advice might you give to someone who's considering starting a program like this?
Yeah, so getting back to what Saki once said, have an open mind for sure, and have a really big heart, and don't take anything personally to the extent that there's going to be a lot of things that just don't not make sense. They do make sense to the prison system somewhere, but I would start with the chaplain services and bringing it in, and it's the science, like it's trying to sell mindfulness, if you will, to different, whatever it may be, corporations, educational systems, and all that. Bringing in that there's some science and experience really does help. And then start by volunteering and understand that this is not something that you're going to get paid for at all, that you're going to probably have to give up some things. It's not a lot of money that you put in, but certainly the travel time and things like that. So
thank you very much for this. Folks who are listening, I'm going to have some links on the episode page for this episode. You can find out more about Gus and the work that he's doing on innerinmate.com. Our guest today, my friend Gus Castellanos. Gus, thank you so much for being here.
thank you, Ted. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.